with that, Superintendent, your own.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Certainly amazing to recognize Ms. Westfall. And Ms. Westfall has shown us in our talks with Crossroads, the leadership, and that vision of transitioning those sixth grade to sixth grade academies. And so listening to her feedback, her leadership about the uniqueness in which Crossroads provide is truly amazing. So it's an honor to have her represent our district. And I must take a special point of privilege, Madam Chair, members of the board, to congratulate our support employee of the year, who's one of my students. And so we used to call her Katie Bug, and that's going to be on the record now. But I'm so proud of her now representing School District 5 Support Employees of the Year. I'd like to begin with our financial reports. We owe you two financial reports from February and March. Represented also in your packets and will be posted with this presentation is our revenues. This is our ending in February 28. You can see our revenues by type, local sources, state, and our other financing sources. You see that as of February revenues, we were at 71.8% of our projection. If we look at expenditures ending in the same time period, February 28th, you see salary and fringe and its percent. Our contractual services, supplies and materials, equipment and transfers for February. And so we are right on track, a little bit over on the salary and fringe side. From last year this time, we have reflected increases through initiatives such as the $50 Fridays, and so that's reflected, and you'll see that throughout the rest of the year. However, in terms of contractual services from last year, we're seeing some. We're not spending as much as we did last year, so. It's not totally a wash. You see the 2% difference there, but are there any questions regarding the February numbers?
Any questions, board?
All right, with that, we'll move on to March. And the same explanations in terms of our revenues coming in on March. You can see the percent change, 7% change that we have taken on from the period ending February 28th to March 31st. As we close out the move to further and close out, we're getting closer to that 100% number of the year, but the district is in good standing. And again, you'll see that 2% increase reflected there from last year. We have done a lot in terms of the payouts and bonuses or benefits to our staff. So, are there any questions regarding our March revenue and expenditures? All right. Here and now, we have an opportunity to talk about some very relevant information regarding teacher retention. Last week, on May 10th, was the day that all teachers were signing contracts to their commitment for next year, and you're going to hear more about teacher retention, teacher recruitment in the coming months. And we wanted to get ahead of that. We heard that 7,000 teachers have left their profession for the last 2 years, and that this year we're seeing kind of being on pace for the same, a repeat of the same. We saw that even in our teacher prep programs, there's been a 30% reduction, compounded year after year, of potential teachers going in. Teaching and learning has changed. COVID is one of the factors, but teaching and learning has changed. It's harder. It's a different profession. And we wanted to hear from frontline teachers on what those solutions would be. And through our teacher leaders, Ms. Carter and Dr. Buffy Murphy, both representing our state, we're very blessed to have state Teachers of the Year right here in our school district. But it was through their leadership that they came up with an initiative. They came up with some ideas, and we want to present this to the board for preliminary discussion. They will be back to continue this discussion, but our work is to make sure we get the greatest educational outcomes, and we can't do that without our teachers. And so we've been our ear to hear this discussion on teacher retention. So at this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Ms. Amy Carter and Dr. Buffy Murphy.
Ms. Amy Carter, and I am the 2022 South Carolina Teacher of the Year. I'm a national board certified teacher, and I have 22 years of teaching experience in District 5 secondary schools.
And I'm Buffy Murphy. I also am a National Board Certified Teacher, was the 2007 South Carolina Teacher of the Year, and have 22 years teaching elementary school in District 5. I also was a student in District 5 from kindergarten all the way through high school graduation. Together combined, the two of us have 58 years of calling District 5 home. This place matters to us. We care about its success. We realize that our title, We Need to Talk, may seem a little abrupt. Teacher retention is a conversation that many people are having, but we're not talking with each other. We're talking in pockets. Amy and I both have unique state and district teacher perspective to feel the weight of this issue, and we appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue with you tonight.
So the first thing that we want to talk about is the problem in South Carolina as we see it. And what I want to show you here is that teacher retention is in crisis in South Carolina. There have been 1,121 teacher vacancies just this year alone, and that's a 50% increase from last year. Since August of 2021, there have been 977 resignations. And what's happening is the teaching demands have surpassed teacher preparation. Veteran teachers are leaving the profession, and novice teachers are being handed more than what they're ready for. I just had dinner with a former student of mine with 2 years of teaching experience. And I took her to dinner because she announced the end of her teaching. And I called her and said, it's not my place to talk you out of this decision, but I want to talk to you about it. Like, tell me your story. And I expected her to tell me that she had a terrible administration or the kids were just really hard to work with. And instead, what she told me was, I'm a second-year teacher, and they've put me in charge of way too much, and I can leave and go do something easier and make more money elsewhere. So I think that that's an important idea that's happening to our young people because of these vacancies of veterans. Additionally, we need to look at some trends in District 5. We care about this district. And in District 5, what we've noticed and what we've heard through conversation is that we have a turnover rate by school ranging from 10% to 42%. If you have a faculty of 60 teachers, 10% is 6 of them. I'm an English teacher, but I can do this math. And 6 people out, or 6 vacancies, doesn't also account for those regular absences for illness and personal days and things like that. So teachers are tired because we're constantly having to plug those holes. The next is that our teaching population of schools is becoming less experienced as our veterans leave. We have a lot of schools with people in their first 5 years of teaching, and it is certainly not that we think that they are poor teachers, but there needs to be some specific support for those young teachers. Novice teachers are at risk because they work in a district, and I say this with all love, but we're a district with a lot of high achievers. And when you are a young one in the game, that burden on your shoulders can get a little bit exhausting. And so our new teachers, I think, are at risk of burnout and resignation and to make decisions under stressful moments that could draw liability for themselves or the school or the district. So there's also a monetary cost. Our district spent, on average, more than $14,000 per teacher beyond salary and benefits for training. Now, this number varies. According to the Learning Policy Institute, that number is a little bit higher. So understand that we're estimating on the more conservative end of that range. But that's a lot of money that we're spending per teacher for training. It needs to matter. It's estimated that teacher turnover costs our district, according to Sarah's Supply and Demand and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, between $1.2 and $2.5 million a year. This year alone, District 5 lost 214 teachers. This monetary cost is startling. One of the incomplete conversations that we're having, though, is that there are other things not reported in this data, and I'll turn this over to Buffy.
While the monetary cost associated with losing teachers in our district is significant, the human cost is detrimental. Teacher loss directly impacts District 5 students. There is no instruction if there is no teacher. A warm body to provide supervision does not take the place of a trained, skilled practitioner. When we go to the doctor, we hope and expect that a doctor will be available for our diagnosis and our treatment, not the office staff. Just as in healthcare, our students expect and deserve the same level of expertise for their educational care. Teacher loss undermines student achievement, as resources at every point of need for a child are deleted. There's also a direct impact to our District 5 staff. Every vacancy requires attention. All hands on deck, we're all in this together. We are all of us, doing everything we can to plug the holes. But eventually, there are more holes to plug than there are resources. Teacher loss impacts District 5 staff by consuming valuable time and resources, including that of our veteran teachers and our administrators, requiring shifts of resources to fill the voids, creating sustainability issues. These quick fixes just can't last. It damages school culture and morale. Every time a teacher leaves our schools, we take another hit to the individual school identity. That impacts morale, and ultimately it undermines the joy of teaching. But none of this is new information. We know that you're aware of this issue. It's a national crisis. It's a District 5 crisis. But our conversation about the problem is incomplete. There are components of teacher retention that are not being addressed in our current dialogue. We need to shift the conversation and take a deeper look at the needs, especially of our new teachers. Amy and I both have a broad view and an in-house view that allows us to have a unique understanding of the needs of our teaching staff, and we'd like to share some of those needs with you tonight.
So the first is that new teachers have a need for transitional support. It's easy to believe that new teachers come to the classroom with the same experiences, the same training, the same teacher needs. However, there are at least 10 pathways to South Carolina certification, things like PACE, Teach for America, the American Board. But even within our traditional preparation programs, there's a lack of standardization. So a student teacher coming from one college or university might have a different experience from someone coming from another. There are limitations for these alternate pathways as well, things to include varied teaching, internship, and practicum experiences, little to no independent classroom exposure prior to employment, and little to no instructional or methodology training. With so many pre-service experiences, we have to find ways to provide that transitional support so that we can pull our new people into the same huddle and work towards a District 5 goal. Additionally, sorry, my clicker here, there is a need for connection and educator identity. New teachers can often get caught in an endless cycle. You start by feeling overwhelmed, and that feeling of being overwhelmed can lead to a feeling of isolation and disconnection, which then leads to a lack of confidence. And then that cycle regenerates itself over and over. The worst part about being new at something is feeling like you're in it alone, like you have to face it alone. So there's a need for someone to reach in and break this cycle to provide that belonging and connection.
What you're looking at here is an effective cohort model. There's something to be said about a group that can challenge the cycle of isolation. A cohort of people navigating the peaks and the valleys of common experience together builds cohesion and loyalty, strengthening both the group and the individuals within it. It's not enough anymore to provide support from the top down or from afar outside looking in. We must provide opportunities for new teachers to grow, connect, and support each other among and within the District 5 context. This will strengthen new teacher resilience and build identity, agency, efficacy, and ultimately teacher leadership. There's a need for differentiated and responsive training for each of our new teachers. Just like children experience developmental stages, so do professionals. According to years of research, new teachers go through attitudinal phases during their first years of service. The need for informed and timely training to prepare them for the upcoming phase in an authentic way sets them up with plans to navigate through it. We need to be more responsive so we don't have to be so reactive. There's a need for a practitioner approach to training new teachers as well. Not only does training need to be responsive, it needs to be authentic from practitioners who understand the responsibilities and the intricacies of leading and managing a classroom. New teachers don't simply need help with task-oriented busyness of the job. They need support that reinforces the craft of the work of teaching. Support that impacts retention would provide relevant training for the differentiated needs of novice teachers, teach specific strategies around expanded adept that enhance instruction and student engagement, and coaching through cycles of in-field observation and feedback.
There's also a need for crisis and stress response because we expect our newest among us to come out of the gate perfect, and that rarely happens. Full classroom responsibility can cause teacher anxiety. Novice teachers experience a discrepancy between what they expect the classroom experience to be and then the reality of what it actually is. This can all intensify these feelings of inadequacy and unpreparedness. And so when we think about crisis response between the two of us, what we think that is a non-evaluative, non-punitive collegial presence, someone who knows them and who knows what that teaching context feels like. New teachers need timely and personalized coaching, feedback, and resiliency support. We've talked a lot about our students needing resiliency support, but not a lot about the adults needing it as well. And finally, someone sitting side by side to offer understanding, encouragement, reassurance, comfort, guidance in these moments of overwhelming stress or crisis. I'd like to end by telling you a story about that side-by-side support. And I have to credit my sources. I'm a big West Wing fan, so this comes from the West Wing. But there's a man who's walking down the street, and he falls in a hole. And the sides of this hole are so steep that he can't crawl out of the hole. And a doctor walks along, and the man hollers up, "Hey, can you help me out? I need help getting out of this hole." And the doctor, he writes a prescription, and he throws it in the hole, and he moves on. And then a priest walks by, and the man hollers up, "Hey, can you help? I'm stuck in this hole." And the priest, he writes a prayer, and he throws it in the hole, and he walks on. And then a friend walks by. And our guy says, "Hey, Joe, I'm stuck in this hole. Can you help me out?" And the friend, he jumps in the hole. And the guy says, "Are you crazy? Now we're both stuck here." And the friend looks at him and says, "Yes, but I've been here before, and I know the way out."
To best love and grow our students, we must first love and grow our new teachers. The problem of teacher retention is here in District 5. The need to respond with authentic support of our new teachers is real. We thank you for your time tonight. We thank you for listening and for opening this dialogue with us. Let's keep talking.
We thank you so much for one, bringing this dialogue to us in such an authentic way. Every time you tell the story about being in the hole, we know our teachers need that, new and veteran, because this has turned all of us into novice teachers. And your very informative way of bringing this to keep our conversation going, I commit to keep this in front of the board as we build this district goal, to include those supports, to include that person that's there in the hole with them. At this time, Madam Chair, members of the board, we stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Loveless, for the ladies?
Ms. Carter, I've enjoyed your story immensely about jumping in the hole and helping out. This board wants to help. I mean, we're here to help you, you know, with any problem. And I just wonder, do we need new resources to be that person that is sitting side by side? Do we need to rethink as a board, you know, how we structure this to put some more people sitting side by side? Because, I mean, if you're a teacher and you're working very hard to do what you have to do, and you have a novice, you know, that's rightfully so trying to depend on those around, but is that going to, you know, do we need some more resources to, I don't even know how to scope that really, but do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, and you know, I think the thing is that we do things already that supports our new people. We absolutely do. We've got great people working on that. I think what we're missing, though, is that idea of someone who's been there before and who understands the pressures, the realities, the decision making. I think a lot of times we expect our new teachers to come out of the gate knowing things, like we assume they know things, like how to de-escalate conflict, how to prepare for parent night, how to handle the load of grading papers, and they don't. That's something that we kind of have to learn trial by fire sometimes, and it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we can take someone with years of experience, K through 6, 7 through 12, and we can have these conversations that we don't have time to have. You know, the way that it's being handled right now, so many people who are helping wear so many other hats administratively for the district. I think we need to have a focused way to handle that with our new people. I think we need personnel to do that.
Ms. Moore.
Thank you both for coming out and
Sure.
for speaking. I mean, I've said it many times, my husband is a teacher, and majority of my friends are teachers in this district. And I think a lot of times people forget that you didn't come into education to have summers off. You came in because you have a passion. And right now, those passionate teachers are burnt out, and they do need the extra help. You know, if I have to take the day off, nobody else has to pick up my role. But for teachers right now, when they take the day off, there is this fear that another educator is going to be having to step in and take on the extra work. So I think that, like you said, it is just important for us to get back to figure out how can we best support our teachers, because at the end of the day, when they are burnt out and they are tired, they are unable to give their all to our kids. And that's what our kids need, is someone who can remain as passionate as they were the day they walked out with that degree, and they were so excited to be a teacher. So you keep telling us what we need to do in order to support our D5 educators, and so that we can continue to support our kids.
One of the reasons why I like that story, if I may, is that the idea is that we all have a responsibility. To whom much is given, much is required. And we all have a responsibility once we learn the magic of whatever it is that we love. And you've got two people up here who love this district, who love teaching, who love kids. We still understand the joy of the profession, who are willing to look behind us and build bridges for people to cross those tough paths that they're still crossing. And I think that that is a model that maybe we need to explore, that we need to try. We need bridge builders, as it were. So, and you're looking at two people very interested in helping with that problem.
You know, I would say, too, that only a teacher can understand your day, you are always responsible for someone. And that may sound trite, you know that, but it's like, even if it's your planning period, the idea of they might need you and you're in the hall, you always feel like you're a caretaker, and you should be as part of your job. But I think that adds to, say, a new teacher that just doesn't realize you really, when you're there, you're on call. And I think that that's part of some of the stress. You know, even something as simple as making a phone call. You know, you get to school before 8. I've told this to Dr. Ross, you're home and it's 5. There's no time in that day if you needed to call the bank or you needed to call, you know, some place that's open for your own. You are right there and you're on call, and you have students that you're responsible for every minute, even if they're not in your room. They could be in the hall, they come to you, they need something. And I think that's one of the things that teachers get into it, and they don't realize how demanding it is. And I don't want to paint a bad picture, because I know what you're saying. I love it, but you have to realize how much more has been put on the plate. They probably think, oh, I love this subject, I'm going to go teach this. Those kids all want to listen to me and learn this. Well, no, there's another part in there. So I love your starting this conversation. I thank Dr. Ross that he's talked to you guys and collaborated on this idea and brought it to this board, because I do know this board cares about teachers. I'll go down the line. Did you had something? And I'll start with you. I saw you, Miss Blackburn Hines.
Okay. I have a two-part question. You mentioned that a lot of our veteran teachers are leaving, and that's putting a burden on our novice teachers. What are your thoughts, or what is a veteran teacher considered? How many years do you need in the profession where you feel comfortable just being a teacher, much less mentoring a brand new baby teacher when they first come in? And to Mr. Lovelace's point regarding like a big brother, big sister partnership between a District 5 veteran teacher and a new teacher in District 5, I would think that might put an even bigger burden on the veteran teacher to mentor a new teacher, especially in the last few years with everything going on. Am I accurate in that, or are there existing partnerships with outside organizations that are helpful or maybe could be improved upon, suggestions that y'all might have? Does that make sense?
Multiple layers, and so
I know, sorry.
We'll tag team this one. For your first question, first through fifth year is often talked about as new teacher. First through third is truly that induction period, when they're going through the first year teaching, when they're going through all those observations to move from an induction contract to a continual contract. And so that through those first 3 years is kind of how that works. I take novice teacher. For the university, you cannot be a coaching teacher until after your third year of teaching. For national board, after your fourth year of teaching, you can go for national board. So that tends to be the range. Kind of depends on who you ask. As far as the big brother, big sister kind of thing, we have mentors. We have mentors in our district. With the state, there's a state law that says we have to provide mentors for our new teachers. We have that program. We do. It does add a burden. Our mentor teachers are teachers juggling all of those different responsibilities. We have that relationship. It works in pockets. It works really well in some places. It's done differently in lots of places. You have to be certified to be a mentor. So there's levels of that as well. That program exists. What we're talking about is not in competition of that. It's in support of that.
Right, and there is something to be said for creating an internal support system within District 5. I have worked in another school district, and we do things differently. And so there's a whole lot of pressure on the shoulders of someone the first 2 weeks of school. And even in my 22nd year, I kind of think to myself, just get everything set up, get through that first 2 week period, and then you're smooth sailing, you know. But it takes, I think it would really decrease that level of stress if you had someone who is able to do more of that targeted District 5 contextual training and support, and both that training side and that crisis response. I keep an eye on the young people. I do. They're near and dear to my heart. I don't want to see someone who believes that this is their mission, because I think a lot of people teach because they're born to teach, not because it was an easy major. And there's nothing more upsetting than seeing someone leave their purpose in life. And I think that if we can provide some of that targeted training, but alongside that crisis response. So if you're having a really bad day or something upsets you, I tell this story, I hope Dr. Ross doesn't mind this. I had a bad day, and I took a personal day, and I went home and I cried, because it was the whole, if you can't say something nice, just put yourself in timeout. And so I took this day off, and I remember he sent me a text message, and he said, I value you, come back tomorrow. And that one text message went so much further with me, because he knew I was having a hard time, a hard day. And I think that crisis response limb of what we're talking about for an internal cohort is really important. For someone to show up and say, you've got this. Let's get the train back on the track. You've got this. Let's look at what's happening and figure out how to make it work.
I had this off. Did you have one, Ms. Hogan?
No question, just wanted a quick moment. Thank you both. Obviously, you guys are highly qualified and definitely experts in this field, so I appreciate y'all tackling this. Appreciate you bringing it to us, and look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gardner, anything?
Just ditto.
Okay. Ms. Moore, anything else? We're good. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. You just make District 5 shine. Thank you.
Thank you.
This, as we said, is the beginning of a long conversation towards a District 5 goal that allows us to be responsive but to move towards that rejuvenation on that curve that was shown. And we certainly appreciate it. Just as so you're aware of the follow-up, we have a survey that's going out. 7 indicators were presented at our Title I meeting that we've talked about, everything from classroom management, operations, PD, parental involvement, and how to talk with parent relations. And then things that we can package a little better, our academic programs. You can get a free plus 18 and plus 30 in our district. But there's one part that we need to work together on, and that's the support. And so Dr. Murphy and Ms. Carter have some cool ideas that they're going to package up in a STARS program. So we'll look forward to hearing that as our way of support. The executive team talked about we are investing in some billboards, because we see some, we're not naming any districts, but we see some in our community. So we're going to be investing in billboards in our communities and surrounding communities. But what do you put on there, as Dr. Harris said, as you drive past that road, what are the 2 things that need to peek out to you? One, we are very competitive with pay, as you see in this budget, but the other one is to be very competitive in support. And so pay and support. And so we thank Dr. Murphy and Ms. Carter for helping us craft what that support looks like, not only for our novice teachers, but for all of our teachers. And with that, thinking about feedback, we had some great feedback at our Irmo High School community input meeting that was held last week on May 18th from 5 to 7. This was a great opportunity for the community to come out. We look forward to LS3P coming and showing some of the thoughts, I think, in the theme of looking back and dreaming forward. And I appreciate all the board members who came out that day to show their support, to be there with the community as we gave our ideas of what some of these outside spaces and inside spaces should be. Hearing from the community is very important. You will learn things like a tree that was dedicated after a passing of a student, how that needs to be preserved, and how another area or garden or areas of brick were put. So all of that is being taken into account, and we look forward to bringing the final plan to the board for approval. But it's really good to get input like this on beforehand. I think my favorite part was the Lego section where you can build on the model. But are there any questions or comments about the Irmo High School Community Input Meeting?
I want to say that it was so well done and well put together, Dr. Hampton, and we enjoyed having the Irmo mayor spoke, and I felt like it was we had a really good crowd. So I just wanted the public to know that if they do have any questions, it'll be on our website. If they did miss, and I was being sure that they understood that part is done. It's not part of the bond we're going to talk about. So I just thought I'd clarify that. Any question or statement?
Well, one of the things that I thought was unique about this was that before the session for the parents, I believe during the school day, the architects had the students come in, and what they did was they put dots on what was important to them, and I thought that was, the transition spaces, the spaces that were that are into the contour of the land, the outdoor classrooms. The things that I saw that they were interested in probably wouldn't be at every high school. It would probably be unique to Irmo High School, and so I thought that was putting in an identity on things. One of the things that they didn't necessarily think was that great was super graphics on walls and so forth. So that told us something. That told us that you don't need to accentuate those items, but and that told us where their input was very important. I thought it was good.
It was well thought out. Ms. Gardner?
Yes, I agree. It was a great opportunity for us to see, what the community had visions of, and I actually got to watch a couple of the teachers from Irmo High School play in the Lego area, and it was very fascinating because they knew so much more about what they understood about the school than I ever thought about. But so I thought that was great, and so I actually have two questions, if that's okay. One is, are you going to allow, or not allow, that's the wrong word, have an opportunity for the teachers to have more input, or have they had their opportunity, first of all? And second of all, is there still opportunity for the public to email or to, is there an avenue for them to still have input?
That's a great question. Mr. Beatonbow is not here with us tonight, but I assure you there will be opportunities. We just need to message that out. I think the cool part of this process is that we will come back to you with reports of that, especially at this function, to get more feedback before we move on. I am aware that the teachers had input on the instructional layout and so what goes in those Legos, and the students had more of the input on the graphics and the different kind of rooms there.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to you, Ms. Hines.
I agree. I attended, and I think that it's really cool, the interactive stations and how community members were able to give their input. I did speak to some folks towards the end, and it may just have been like I don't know. You know how sometimes you say something and then you hear somebody else hear something else. Is there any concern that Irmo High School will go over budget, or that the original intentions will have to be modified because of budget? I know I spoke to some Irmo parents, and their response to me was that they loved the presentation. They're really excited. They just want to make sure that we don't take shortcuts and that they get the school that they were promised and that they want. And so I just wanted to kind of give you the opportunity to address that, because I hadn't heard that, so I just...
No, a great question, and it's a valid concern, because we're watching prices increase. We're seeing what inflation is doing. I think the benefit now is that that LS3P and then whoever, as we go through the bidding phase, they're going to have an opportunity to bid on the work to put it within today's prices. So we don't have necessarily the promise out there. What we do have is the allocated funds. And I think those funds won't change. And I think it gives a further clarification in your question to explain to the public that this is not contingent on any referendum, that you all allocated these funds, and that these funds are all going into this wing of Irmo High School.
And you had a question? Mr. Lovelace?
Yes. I just wanted to say that Ms. Gardner and I attended a ceremony at Seven Oaks Elementary School to honor Ms. Lou Kennedy's mother, who is a lifelong teacher. And at that, I understood from last year that, or a year before maybe, I don't know, I don't remember, but Ms. Kennedy had donated a hood to be used in the area that was for pharmacy tech training for, she's the chairman and CEO of Nephron, and she has donated a lot to our district. Anyway, we talked about it, and I wanted to make sure that when you get to that point, that hood is located in the new building, because we talked about the fact that we hadn't yet installed it because the old building was going to be removed, so we didn't want, do that. But I wanted to make sure that we, that we absolutely, and she even volunteered to, if there were replacement parts or anything else that needed to go with that equipment, that she would be glad to furnish it. So I wanted you to know that.
Well, I would like to tell you that I appreciate that when we started these conversations. And so I want to thank Mr. Priggy and Mr. Will McGinty for finding the hood. So we have the hood, it is secure and ready to be placed where we'll have the maximum instructional outcomes there.
I think we're all really excited about the Irmo facilities getting the facelift they've long deserved and needed. And as far as that idea, I understand about inflation, but I think that this board is committed to being sure every bit of this plan is brought to, if inflation does give more, I mean, it would come back to us, and my plan is not to cut one thing, and that has happened, and I hope this board is committed to this project. So, with that, you have one more item.
One more item, Madam Chair, and this is to continue the discussion on the potential bond referendum to finance poor and fair rated facilities in the 2019 MBCON report. I think one of the issues in talking about bond referendums is talking about these solely in terms of facilities. As you heard from our teachers representing the state and our district, that our overall outcome is to have the maximum educational outcomes. And we do that through a systems approach of a vision statement that we love and grow our students. And we heard the need to love and grow our teachers in order to love and grow our students. We talked about our mission statement, and we keep this mission statement front and center as we are on a ever-increasing journey to be focused on academic, social, and emotional growth and development. We have two major challenges to this mission. But I'm going to go over the first two now. We have 4 challenges to this. The first 2, though, was what we consider mental health and its impact on education. Dr. Harris will bring forth a report later today that even in this, it's updated that 1 in 5 youth are experiencing mental health disorders. and that has a impact on instruction. The other one is poverty's impact on proficiency. I've talked about this over and over again, but we were able to quantify it. We honored Dr. Van Holden for his work and his team's work on the dashboard. But we actually took all of the elementary schools in the state of South Carolina, highlighted in blue those in Midlands area districts, and we looked at literacy scores or English language arts scores in terms of those who are proficient, and we put them on a regression towards poverty. Now, kind of like statistics here, but you can actually relate one item to another in terms of its impact, called a correlation coefficient, or R value. That simply states that 71.3% of the performance is related to factors in poverty. So when you talk about how tough teaching and learning is, then you take someone who is teaching and learning in an area of high poverty. They're overcoming 71.3% of extra that is not reflected should poverty not be introduced. And so this is compounding, and it's not just a District 5, this is a national regression, but this shows you how it looks in the state of South Carolina. And so to combat that, we are investing in a continuum, a whole child continuum. And you will see later a whole teacher continuum as this conversation bridges, to make sure that there are no gaps there. In order for us to outperform these factors of mental health and poverty's impact on performance and proficiency, we need a whole child continuum where there's someone to call, someone at the point of contact for each phase of the entire child's continuum. So that when we talk about a referendum and we talk about it needs to address poor and fair rated facilities, these come after two additional challenges to the mission: providing a safe and secure and equitable learning environment in which we're trying to take care of the challenges of mental health and poverty. Our goal by board policy is to use our resources to achieve the greatest educational returns. And that's what we're looking for, the greatest educational returns. And so we look at two other factors that compound to this, and it's facility quality, and we provide 4 options that we are asking the board to consider, and school capacity, and we provide 4 phases that we're asking the school district to consider. And we use guiding principles to help us to get to these, to our recommendations, to our options and phases. We've presented this to you in terms of our community analysis, facilities needs assessment, enrollment projections, and our instructional plan review to bring you a foundational plan. Members of the board and the community, we are not in this plan saying that this is going to make us, in terms of facilities, the #1 district in the state. Simply providing a strong foundation. Any house that's not built on a strong foundation will fall. And we believe that we need to ensure that consistency, because while we're 3 communities, we're one family, we're one district. And so we asked in a lunch and learn community input from all our communities on what they thought about their plan, and to take input to actually change the plan if necessary. We asked what attendance zone of District 5 community you live in. And we can see while we had 98 participants in this round of community input, not everyone answered the questions here. So you see percentages, but you also see the raw numbers as well. But this was more balanced than the last time we did the evening. And we talked about the impact of poverty on proficiency, showing the regression, showing that correlation coefficient of 71%, how it would affect one part of our district more so than the other. When you drill down in terms of poverty and its performance, we do not escape that. And so as we look at supporting our teachers and supporting our schools, we want to make sure that we're putting extra resources in those areas to beat that regression. But if you take mental health, poverty on proficiency, then facilities, we are again compounding these problems on these schools. And so we're looking at the poor and fair rated facilities. We went over what the MBCon district-wide facility study suggested, and we talked about that impact and how it's showing in real time, and that it's not, again, a function of the work of the teachers and staff and administrators in IRMO, but we have now quantified what they're fighting against. And so without these investments, there is a cost. And we've seen over the last 11 years how our district has changed. We want to use the resources that we have to transform families out of poverty. We believe that education is that great equalizer, and we believe that that we're in a position with these reinvestments to drive opportunity in all parts of our district. The methodology in which we do it now is this, where we regulated red representing the poor facilities and yellow representing the fair rated facilities in those areas of high poverty concentrations, further compounding that multi-tiered challenges to these schools. We're sending 10 elementary schools to Crossroads. Ms. Westfall represents the amazing teachers and staff that we have there, but those challenges are becoming more and more intense. And so the goal is to move from this format to this format, where we can keep the same philosophy that we have in Chapin, but provide that for Dutch Fork and IRMO. This will allow us at minimum to address the poor and fair rated facilities of all the 24 facilities that were rated in the study. Initially, prior to public input, we talked about selling a Harbison West Elementary School in a transition. But we heard from the public very loud and clear, and these community input meetings have helped us change and continue to revisit our projects. And again, this was a opportunity to bring back to you feedback from the public. And so there are two projects. Now I want to make sure that we say it again, are not in this bond referendum: the IRMO High School project and the administrative offices for the district office, again, are not in the bond referendum. We have secured those with other funding avenues. What we are proposing is a professional development wing of the district office. There is a need to invest in the training of our faculty and staff. We have seen, and just as early as late as tonight, the needs to continue to professionally develop our faculty and staff. So this would be an add-on to the administrative offices that have already been secured in funding to address the mold life safety issues that we brought back to you in November. After that would be the transitioning of the sixth grade academy model from Crossroads to Dutch Fork Middle and IRMO Middle. This would empty the Crossroads intermediate site, which would be then converted $1.9 million into an elementary school. That money will allow Nursery Road to go into Crossroads, and it would be remodeled, brought up to, with the walls in and being brought up to code. That's a 1979 building. So we have to put money in there to bring everything up to code. Once Nursery Road is finished, Nursery Road will move back into Nursery Road. Harbison West would move into the Crossroads site. The $1.9 million would not have been wasted because Crossroads would have already been an elementary school. But the difference that we heard from members of our community is how important the Harbison West site is to not only the community, but to the agreement of that community in our district. And so we have changed where the early childhood center, again, 80% of the brain is developed in the first 3 years, would move from the Crossroads site to the Harbison West Elementary site. Dr. Harris is already working on ideas on how we could upscale that program with SERDEP funding, and pending approval, his team would start working on that. But what's cool about this site is that we can secure the upper region, the upper area, and not the lower area, and it doesn't need as much transition because it does, with its setup, serve very well as an early childhood center. We would need space in all of the Chapin schools. That is the Academy for Success, the 5 program, would move more centrally located to what we propose to be called the Rosenwald Rich Lakes building, which is currently Dutch Fork Elementary School. And that school renovated more of a secondary nature, and a new Dutch Fork Elementary School to address the 1953 model in the current Dutch Fork Elementary School attendance area. Seven Oaks Elementary, which we did the dedication for the outdoor classroom, would receive a security upgrades. Chapin High School would receive parity in with its arts program with the Fine Arts building, and major renovations to Dutch Fork High School. Dutch Fork High School was the newest building at one point. It's no longer, and so it needs upgrades, as well as the stadium upgrades at Dutch Fork High School and Irmo High School. And so to be clear, we did move the security upgrades from the bond. We did not want to make that contingent of a passing. We're going to be talking about safety and security as well in schools, and so we'll have to address that through capital. We want to be very clear and on to the public. There's, I think, one of the major obstacles that I have to communicate is that this money, this $150 million minimum, or the $340 maximum, cannot be used for operations or teacher salaries. I think a lot of question is, why don't they use this money for to pay teachers? And it's against the law. We cannot do that. So this is debt service. This is monies that we use for construction, technology, and equipment and renovations. And even though it's the sale of bonds, we pay it back with debt service millage for the majority of that. But because this is requiring us to go over the 8% limit that we have every year, and we truly max out that 8% for the Irmo High School project, we have to ask the voters if we can go over 8%. So I presented 4 options to the community, outlined here, looking at our total assessed value of $586,383,014, and presented the options towards the board. We asked in the poll, which of the following new construction projects is most important to you? And again, the number 1 project was the new 6th grade academies at Dutch Fork Middle and Irmo Middle, followed by the Chapin Fine Arts, then Dutch Fork Elementary School, and DO actually got 2 votes on this one. And then we asked which of the building modifications is most important to you? We had a little bit more spread on this one. The relocation of the 5 and Adult Ed and Academy for Success to the proposed Rosenwald Rich Lakes building, followed by the Early Childhood Center at Harbison West. But Harbison West combined would have been what most people were interested in that. We wanted to explain how can and this is the second challenge, should option 3 or 4 be selected, how can you have a bond referendum that doesn't increase taxes? And we wanted to share with the community that under our current meal cap of 69.5 meals, looking at our existing debt in the gray, anything between that debt bar and the line is monies, if approved, that we can borrow through the sale of bonds and service with our debt service meals. You go over the bar, you would have to increase taxes. You stay under the bar, and then it can be handled with your current taxes. So we wanted to show this from PFM, this model, how we could actually have a bond referendum that did not increase taxes. In option 2, you see the bar is gone because we go over that bar with $340 million. Yellow represents the Irmo High School project, again showing the community that that's protected. Red is our annual maintenance. This will be, we will always be in debt because we will use this sale of bonds to take care of our buildings each and every year. Blue is the proposed bond referendum under option 2 with a max mill of 103.68 to service that. We look at option 3, the line returns. Again, we don't go over that line, and you can see how we service the blue bond referendum out to 2038. In option 4, you can actually lower the line a bit. In 2027 is the only point that it goes over a little bit. PFM can explain their rationale that at a conservative 1.5% increase that might be a little conservative line there, and so we can still service that. Then we looked at the fourth issue that we had to deal with in our considerations and deliberations, and that's growth. Referendum or no referendum, growth is upon us, and we have to address it. We believe that it needs to be included in a comprehensive plan. If we look at 9 years ago, 25% of the students attended all Chapin schools. 38% attended all Dutch Fork schools. 36% attended all Irmo schools. If you look at it, if this year's 135th, you see that has shifted dramatically. Almost 40% attend Chapin schools, but only 6 zone schools are in that area. 7 zone schools where we have 30% of the population, 8 zone schools where we have 31%. And so we need to think, we need to forecast and think, be forward thinking to address this. And if you look, again, drilling down by neighborhood, you can see capacity. We have looked at a 80 to 85% capacity, the school threshold capacity, as where it starts to get a little challenging to the operations of a school. Now, of course, we could go to 100% capacity, but one of the things that we see is that you'll hear from teachers that say lower class sizes matter. I think lower capacities matter as well. And so we want to make sure that we're in position in order to be under that threshold at all of our schools. And so as we look at the projections that Dr. Harris provided through us through Malone and McBroom, we have seen that the Chapin numbers are almost spot on. And so that provides us some validity to what we're seeing and the need to address the growth. And so we have options here in terms of phases. Phase one, we do not pursue a referendum, or the referendum fails. We need to look at how to address the growth with this model. I would ask that I not guess at it, and that at that time, if the referendum does not pass, or if we do not pursue one, that we ask for professional help, and not us drawing lines here, to figure out exactly how to address the growth. And my philosophy is that you do not build new buildings, that we would have to use our existing facilities and fill back to the existing facilities. If phase two, if the referendum passes, but we do not look at rezoning at all, and that would look at portables, that again, we're pricing these between $80,000 to $100,000, depending on where it needs to be. Portables is not just bringing a portable on campus, is making sure the Office of School Facilities has it equipped with life safety issues and necessities and ADA ramps, and so we want to make sure that that's included in that phase two. Phase three, if the bond referendum passes, and because of the growth there, that we would move Ballantyne Elementary into the Chapin cluster, proposing a 6th through 8th grade model for middle schools throughout the entire district. This will allow, there were some questions that were brought up about how the rezoning would look at Ballantyne Elementary. In our initial numbers, we have enough space with Ballantyne and Chapin and the students who are zoned for Dutch Fork to go to the Dutch Fork elementary schools, to bring all K through 5 to all of our elementary schools. But again, if this is selected, we will need a professional demographer to draw out the lines, because there might be some flexibility. There might be some homes really close to Ballantyne that really need to go to the Ballantyne Elementary School. And then phase four. Phase four is if we cannot sustain the growth through self-selection and magnets at Spring Hill, relieving the pressure at Chapin High School. With the extra wing available at Spring Hill, we believe, without taking seats from Irmo, without taking seats from Dutch Fork, that we can increase the number of seats at Chapin in phase three. But if we cannot, and Chapin goes over its capacity, then introducing the fourth cluster, which is phase four. And so we asked the poll question: if the referendum passes, which phase do you prefer? And the phase three received 2 more votes than phase four. Then we asked again, of the options before the board, which do you prefer? And the majority said option 3, referendum with no change in taxes. We asked how you would like to be notified of any updates, and email continues to be the #1 way the community wants to be informed. And so we tallied, trying to get as much information, much feedback as possible. We had feedback on May 3rd, May 10th, May 17th, May 19th, and the results all favor option 3, and the majority of the phases would be phase 3, option 3, phase 3. So it would be the recommendation of the administration to move forward with option 3, phase 3, and to start to make plans to move in that direction. I would say, before I conclude, the question was brought to us, and there were many questions that can be submitted, continue to be submitted through communications@lexridge5.org, communications@lexridge5.org, where you can continue to send in your questions. But one of the questions is, Dr. Ross, why not wait? Is this the time with the economy, what we're seeing in inflation? Why shouldn't we just wait? If we move forward with option 3, phase 3, it does not require additional money from the voter. So the voter is not adding more to their cost. But what would add is the cost of borrowing money is going up, and interest rates will continue to rise. It's the Fed's only hedge on inflation. Costs will continue to rise. Without naming any names, districts who have failed bond referendums, when they come back, the number is almost twice as much as it was in the earlier levy question. So I believe that not only the costs go up, the price tag goes up, but also the compounded impacts of mental health, poverty, facility status, and capacity will also increase. And for that reason, the administration brings forward for our next meeting, option 3, phase 3. That concludes the superintendent's report, and I stand for any questions.
Any questions? Ms. Hines?
How are we trying to reach out to stakeholders that do not have children in school? And are we willing to consider having in-person events, especially in the Harbison West community, prior to June 13th? I ask because I've spoken to several Irmo residents and a couple of folks that are on Irmo Town Council that have gotten several phone calls from the surrounding communities, especially the retirement communities. And they're hearing different rumors. I mean, I think the rumor about us selling Harbison West is still out there. And what I'm hearing is that those folks are not necessarily listening to our board meetings or on social media, and they're not going to look at local media or media outlets that may publish an article that the district puts out to try to clarify this. I absolutely agree, and I'm concerned about especially the elementary schools in the Irmo cluster that are in very poor condition. Those students deserve a school that they can be proud of and that they're set up for success. And I mean, with a bond referendum that isn't going to raise taxes, I think that that's definitely something that we need to consider and educate the public about. But I'm concerned that, especially with the virtual forums, I mean, we have 17,000 plus students in our district, and we've had about 250-ish folks get on to the virtual forums. I'm concerned that the public hasn't gotten enough information to feel confident in voting for a bond referendum. And I just would implore the administration to kind of consider that, especially before June 13th, when you're going to bring this to us, just because I want to make sure we have given everybody every opportunity to understand what is going to be put on the project list and how we're prioritizing it, since we cannot change it after we vote on it on June 13th.
Do you want to respond to that?
I would say that I agree. We have, I think, one meeting at Harbison West that we're planning as a live session for that area. One concern from the administration is that as we do this, we're talking a lot of ifs, and I think that's scattering the message. Once we agree on what the project list is, it allows us to focus the message. I think the more we have discussions on options and phases versus, right, I guess I'm asked, all right, which one are they going to choose? And so we're in a quandary of, I would like to, from this point on, talk about the administration's recommendation without leveraging you all, but to say this is the area that we're going to focus in on and get more specific feedback on that particular option and phase, so that the community is not lost on, are they going for 340? Are they not doing one? Just talk about it in terms of this is the recommendation. And I think that would further clarify some of those. But to answer your question, yes, I'm not going to put her on the spot, but we were asked specifically by the Homeowners Association to do one at Harbison West, and so we're going to honor that between now and June 13th.
Good. Anybody else question? I know, Dr. Ross, I think it's at the next meeting we'll have the bond attorney and get into.
Yeah, so
we have your recommendation tonight, which the
Right.
board can think about, and then have questions tonight. But that'll really hammer it down to what the board supports.
Yeah, our bond attorney and our financial advisor, Jay Glover, will be here.
Another question?
I just have one more, and you may not have the specific answer on this. I was just, it came to my mind when we were at Irma High School last week. I think the Irma High School project is about $42 million that we've budgeted for that. Is that right, about that?
48.
48, yes,
48, okay. So I saw that Dutch Fork Elementary, we're budgeting about $41.5 million. Can you explain where that number is coming from? Because I know Dutch Fork's student population and that school will probably be much smaller than a high school education wing. And, you know,
Great.
can you kind of talk about that cost? I've had those questions as well.
That's a great point to bring up. So the wing of Irmo High School is almost equivalent to one whole elementary school. If we were to do a whole high school, we would be talking this entire referendum, 150, to do the entire high school. So that wing is almost equivalent to the elementary school that we're going to build out at about 650 students.
Good. Thank you. I had one question that I thought might be important to, when you talk about the Early Childhood Center, I know how important that would be to that population. It can start our children off early. There's probably a lot of need for child care. And so that Early Childhood Center, I mean, I know by the name we should know what it means, but it would be good, it doesn't have to be tonight, but it'd be good to have, you know, some specifics for people and what it will mean to that community and what it can do to give children a head start.
I'm looking at Dr. Harris. I think he and his team could prepare
That would be
something
really
for
good.
that. I think, you know, just one of the things that came to our team, I didn't know what kindergarten remediation was.
I don't either.
And when you need help, and we feel like everybody should come in on similar areas, but a kindergarten teacher has such a span to deal with, from children who can read to children who don't recognize characters and colors of the alphabet or the color wheel. And that gap starts early. And to what Ms. Felkel and Ms. DeVita Price work very hard on is getting into those homes. And so I don't want to take Dr. Harris's thunder, but if you want to speak to some of the things that we can bring back in terms of early childhood education.
Absolutely. I think you're right on point and on track. I certainly look forward to that. In fact, Ms. Price and I were talking just the other day during our bi-monthly meetings that we need to have more conversations about what's happening in 4K to make certain that the board and this general community are keenly aware of what's happening, because there are a ton of wonderful things that are happening and I think need to have voice to that. So you can go from what's happening in terms of working with teachers and staff, to the general community and the local preschools and centers in the area to just simple learning strategies that are happening in the 4K classroom. So there are a number of different things that we can take and bring forward to you to just kind of share about what's happening in 4K and how we can build upon that at this early childhood center.
That would be great, because I know that there are gaps. Some families can't realize that there are children that aren't read to every night. And and trust me, by the time they're in middle school, we've lost it if we have not gotten those children to be able to read. And a lot of discipline problems are from that. It's just, I mean, I don't know, but that's one of the most exciting things about this to me, because I know that behavioral problems and learning problems are stemming from that foundation. And this is so important. And then COVID is just another thing for even families where you are reading to your children and you are being involved. They've become burnt out as parents, realizing what a teacher does every day. So it's like these kids, there's a gap there too. So I just feel like there's a lot we could cover in this early childhood development. So I'll be quiet with that, but I'm excited. And that can be, I feel like the night you have us ready to support this recommendation, that would be a really important part to be in
Yes,
your
ma'am.
presentation.
Last thing, I just a point of privilege there. Wanted to, in the informational agenda, item 20, our graduation ceremony. So
Okay.
this will be the last meeting before graduation. So
Okay.
we listed those for the community's
good.
knowledge.